reconvening a hearing on hearing 11, which is on infrastructure, renewable energy, transport and designation. For those people who have just turned up, my name is Paul Smith. I'm the chair of the hearing panel. I've got Alan Watson, who's an independent commissioner. And on my left, I've got Ben Stephen Alley, who's a councillor. He's an commissioner as well. He's got his certification. So welcome. When you're ready to introduce yourself, please feel free. And what will happen, you'll present your evidence. We might have some questions. We might ask the staff if they've got any points to clarification, result of your evidence. After that, then we'll hear basically the next 2 days. Ms. King, is it?
Yes. I've got some papers that I can distribute. Sorry, everything was late and then in a hurry.
Fiona King, we haven't got Leah Friedland, is it?
No, I'm representing.
And you're representing Elbury Holden.
Yeah, I think LJ King
And
Limited.
Elbury King. Okay, thanks. We're on the two community boards.
Are these all the same?
Cheryl Bainbridge, our chairman apologises she can't be here, and the deputy's in Auckland, so.
And I'm Darren X, Tahiku Committee Board Member for the North Cape Subdivision, and I sit on 2 drainage committees for FNDC.
And the reason why we're all here today, because I'm the chairperson of the Kaitoa drainage area and the Kaikino Waihara area. Cheryl being the community board member, we are a committee that's been delegated under them by the council as of 2014. But before that, we were actually had our own agenda items, etc., through the council works committees. And with Darren, he's actually just taken up a role of going out there and being able to check these drains and things, etc., because the council has been a bit slack in having somebody back under land drainage since what, the last 5 years?
And the rescue.
Yeah. So this is why we wanted to come along today, particularly with this drainage, to ensure that we try hard to get this into the district plan, because it is so important when you're actually doing planning, subdivisions, and looking at applications like that, that the drainage district is considered. That's the main reason we're here today, and it is part of the Far North District Council. I mean, I can.
Yeah, what would you like me to answer?
Yeah.
Right, so
Those are the maps that we can refer to.
so they're all the just get one and that's the just get and there's one.
Yes.
It's and you got one of those.
Yes. Yeah, and these are just the smaller ones, or those bigger ones there.
Okay, so I'll just start. Should I just start
with
with
these?
start with the Is there anything else?
These are just my extras, because I wasn't sure about what I had given, whether there needed to be any.
The key people.
Okay.
Would they need these as well?
Yeah, and those as well.
Just so you who's on the end, he's the gentleman who prepared the section 42A report on infrastructure. That point, he's got to call.
Okay, that's okay then.
He's the one who will be listening to what you have to say, then he reports back to us.
Okay. So basically, I'm here to convince you that the FNDC needs to include the land drainage into the district plan. I was disappointed, to say the least, that the planner's recommendation was to reject this. The north was developed into pastoral land by hand, with enormous amount of manual labour, digging drains, clearing scrub and gorse, tea tree, etc., extracting of gum and bush logs. People of all nationalities were involved in our area, hence the multicultural race in the north. A lot of land was balloted out by the government after the wars to give people a start in life, and they worked hard to clear this and make a home, and the challenges and commitments that they made to clear the land, and the huge challenges that they made. For me, it's very disappointing to watch and observe that the hard-earned land being now allowed, so that the hard-earned grafting to, establish that land has been allowed to revert back into scrub gorse, and people not being able to live off their land as they did in the past. The digging of the Awanui River, its tributaries and channels, has made it possible for all boats to sail up to Kaitaia and Awanui to deliver stores and take away produce in the past. This work was mostly done by hand and shovel back in those days, and they're the type of people that created the township of Kaitaia and Awanui that we have today. We should all be very grateful and enjoy the benefits of their hard-earned land and our easier lifestyle. Hence, the drainage scheme established way back in the early 1990s has enabled this development of productive land of the Te Hiku ward, being Kaitaia, Ahipara, Awanui, Waipapakauri, Lake Ohia, Motutangi, Hauhora, Aori, Herikino, just to name a few, that were all developed on low-lying land or very productive land, but all require drainage. And without drainage, you don't get it. Drainage played a major and integral part in the establishment of the rural farming, horticulture, and our region's developments. The land court blocks on Kaitaia, on the Kaitaia to Awanui flats, were developed in this way. Now these very productive farms have been transferred to Te Arawa and Ngā Takoto. This country, New Zealand, relies upon agriculture and horticulture for a large amount of our export dollars. We have 5 drainage districts in our Te Hiku ward, and we are the only ward that actually has land drainage drains. Whangarei, and if you're working under the NRC, Whangarei has 2 and Kaipara has 40 odd. Herikino, which the council recognises in their asset planning, has not been operating for the last 40 years, but is still recorded in the FNDC records. Motutangi, the furthest north agriculture area, but in the last few years has seen a large development of horticulture, avocado orchards, and increased drainage connections without approval of FNDC. It runs into the mouth of the Hauhura Harbour. Now we're talking about a large area up north. And if you look at your maps, on page 1 is actually showing you that's the Kaitaia area, land area that is rated by FNDC. The next one is the older drainage district map that was always utilised before this new one I just found on the web. The third one is the Motutangi, Waihara and Kaikino area that is rated by the council. And the back 3 pages is just showing the Motutangi, Waihara and Kaikino maps in, more detail. I'll come to the other urban one soon. In the Motutangi area, we've got all this avocado orchards happening. It's all been divided into sections with always drains, increasing the flow into the land drainage drain, which is causing quite a few issues to downstream landowners. And that's why I'm saying in development or resource consents that go through the FNDC, this is very necessary to be considered, because there's not only where the drain connects, it's where it actually gets out to its outlet, in this case, the Hauhura Harbour entrance. Waihara, which drains into the Waipawera stream in the Ranganunu Harbour, also has large avocado orchard developments and increased drainage connections. That is causing concerns in that area right now, with the Waipawera stream having an awful lot of siltation. What else is there? Siltation.
I can't get to it from
Yeah,
the
yeah. And just the lack of maintenance has reduced it, which is creating some of the farmland that are paying the drainage rate in the lower areas, or paying the higher drainage rate in the lower areas, more flooding. Sarah?
Jana?
Yeah.
And some of the avocados have planted right up to the drains, making access to the drains for clearing.
There's been a
If
lack of
possible.
monitoring.
The same thing happens in the Kaikino area, which drains into the upper reaches of the Awanui Harbour. And it's the same avocado development, horticultural. It's basically a change of use of land, and I don't believe that there is any process, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, to actually for them to apply to actually go through that sort of thing when they are actually digging drains, creating development, which is very good for the north. It's the right thing to do, but it's just got to be so it doesn't affect people that have been there for a long time through flooding of or lack of drainage management or the size of the drains that the water's got to get down to.
As more and more of pukekohe's being built out, the growers are finding that this is a great place to be, and you can get your food ripened earlier, your produce. So the concern is that if they want to add drains, they without approval, then it's going to impact on others.
There is a process in council that does not happen, and they do have bylaws that they don't enforce, that says that they should actually ensure these things happen. And unfortunately, it's a very weak part of the council structure at the moment. But with all this development, and that has not been considered by FNDC, the increased drainage of land and alterations to the scheme must continue without approval of FNDC. Hence the need to include this in the district plan, so that people, when they purchase blocks of land, are actually made aware of the process. I've been speaking with the CEO of the regional council as well. FNDC's maps are better. As you can put in an address and it'll come up with things that happen on that land. NRC's website, you can't put in an address. All you can do is look at the map and then refer to all the different types of maps like biodiversity, wetlands, the other ones in there. Anyway, you've got to go referring to maps. There's nothing that refers you to that piece of land, and there's nothing, even when you try and put in, okay, I want to look at this piece of land, what does it mean? It doesn't actually tell you enough. Example, this block is within 100 metres of a wetland, or the wetland is there, you have to apply for resource consents to do anything there, etc., etc. And that is becoming more and more difficult for rural property owners now to actually know what your property is actually labelled as. And it's better to have in your district plan the drainage districts in there to say you are in a land drainage district, and there are rules that they need to follow and apply. I get to. Oh,
The Kaitaia thing.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, this type of land development needs to be considered by FNDC, and rules applied at subdivision stages, earthwork or building consents. This is why the land drainage schemes need to be in the plan. There is too much focus on ecology, wetlands, and not enough on productivity, which this country needs. And by that I mean people just need to know, if you're going to own some land or have some land, what part of it can you actually produce off? Because there's an awful lot now that's happening that has been mapped without people knowing, or they don't even know how to find it, to find out later that they actually can't do what they think they bought the property to do. And lastly, Kaitaia, which is the largest of all the land drainage areas, just under 10,000 hectares, 112 kilometres of FNDC county registered main drains, or we call them assets. This does not include any farm drains, in brackets private, that would be connecting into these main drains, which would at least be another 1,000 kilometres. Kairoa drains into the Awanui River, down the Whangatani Spillway, into the Awanui Harbour in a few places, at i.e. Paparori, Waipapakauri. It drains into the Awanui Township, the Kairoa Lake Bed, and the Ahipara Stream. Kairoa scheme is linked and intertwined with the Awanui Flood Protection Scheme run by NRC. Both these schemes interlink at certain points. Now, back in 2003, I think it was, FNDC and NRC did a memorandum of understanding whereby the flood protection assets transferred to the NRC and the land drainage was left with FNDC. And what that meant was some of the drains or some of the main outlets transferred to NRC, so did the stock banks. They are very proactive up here and are doing a very good job of the Awanui Flood Protection Scheme, i.e. just the other day, 200 mils. Kairoa did not have flooding within the town, which is actually quite unusual with that type of rainfall. Hope we don't get that in another couple of months. We could be worse off. It's also interlinked with urban stormwater, and that's something we need to talk about, which I have got another page there just showing you one instance. Which is, I think it's page 3. And this is an example of a drain that is shown in the blue line. Is it blue? You got blue or orange or red? They're all drains that drain Kairoa urban areas that take that water from the urban area out to the rivers. And that the urban stormwater in Kairoa is interlinked with land drainage. And that's an example of that. Okay, financial situation. The land drainage schemes are fully recognised by FNDC and rated as a targeted rate, which means monies are collected by FNDC and kept in their own accounts. Monies can only be used for the scheme's maintenance of these assets. Rates must be approved each year by FNDC and adopted into the annual plans. Each year, it has formal committees of FNDC and operates under the Te Hiku Community Board. They have their own agendas and financial reporting. Rate demands show that the cost charged to ratepayers is quite high, which I've given you an example of a rate demand with the purple red line through it.
Yep.
This is showing you, this is one dairy farm that I know of, and they're paying $6,122 a year for land drainage. And that is a targeted rate in Kaitaia. And the other page you will see, if you turn it over in the yellow, this has all been worked out for this year's rates. The Kaikino, Motutangi and Waihara have 3 differentials, A, B, and C. And you'll see that's their rating that they actually pay. So it's not something that's small, it's actually something that should be equal to urban stormwater. I just showed about the rates. The land drainage is not part of the FNDC 3 waters and does have a link with the urban stormwater, like I said to you before. But Kaitaia and Awanui townships rely on the drainage scheme assets to deliver their stormwater from the urban streets through drainage channels, drains to outlets like Awanui River. Urban spread is happening all the time, and the abuse of the land drainage assets and rural land being used as a dumping ground or a relief valve at the rural landowner's expense. And that's why I go back to the map that shows you the urban area and the drains. That's it there. The land drainage drains are open drains, no piping like urban stormwater. As urban sprawl happens, a lot of open drains are left open and not removed from the land drainage assets and added to the urban stormwater maintenance, i.e. the one I'm talking about here is called Matthews Outlet behind the Kaitai Intermediate and the development of housing behind the Northerner. All floodgates and stop banks entering the stop banks entering the Aonui have been transferred. I talked to you about that in the memorandum of understanding. We all must remember that when rivers are in high flow, the floodgates will close on the river and outlets. No water will flow out. Land behind the gates will have to hold stormwater for its catchment area until such time as the gates open as the river levels recede. In Kailua and Awanui, that can be 24 hours, sometimes more, leaving flooding in houses, streets and roads. It will happen. You're not going to be able to stop that, because if you can't let it out to stop the floodgate, it's staying in behind there. And that's where the stormwater retention, and that is very important when it comes to subdivisions that are happening. Or more in particular, infilling is an area that gets neglected when looking for retention of stormwater. Land drainage bylaws, I've talked to you about that before, where the FNDC has been very slack in administering these. They're not even fully aware of what it covers, and it is up for renewal now since last October, but they're still working on it, which is a favourite saying of FNDC. And the land drainage bylaws actually state that it covers the entire rated area. It does not state that it is only to do with the drainage assets. And this is where it really needs to be looked at, because when you talk about the entire area, I think the wording says a drain connected to a drain that's connected to a drain that's connected to a county drain are all included. The main issues in the bylaws that need to be addressed in a plan, in the district plan, is no buildings within 10 metres of the drainage channel. A machine needs to walk or drive either side on an annual basis to spray or clean weeds out. Too many times FNDC is allowing buildings to be consented within 10 metres of the setback, i.e. housing developments like we have here in behind the Northerner. And there's in that instance there, the developer has actually used the two rules. We're in an urban area because this is an urban land drainage drain. We don't have to pipe it. And then we're in a stormwater area, so we shouldn't have to pay land drainage rates. Now, our chairperson, who lives down there too, and her rate demand, she has urban stormwater and land drainage. So she wasn't really sure which one she could be in, but she's actually in a urban street. Remembering a digger needs enough room to walk, swing, reach into the channel, deposit weeds off the bank of the walking track, so the walking track is kept clear all the time. Hence, the 10-metre rule is required. Vegetation. No planting within 5 metres of a drain edge, and only low-level plants that won't restrict water. No planting of trees as they grow, and fallen limbs, branches, etc. can block the water flows and create flooding. Hence the 10-metre rule that's needed to get a digger in there. And that's very important, particularly when you have landscapers within consents saying to plant up riverbanks, drains, etc. You have to, if it's in a land drainage area, you have to consider these rules, because they'll be the first people that come to us. Like I've had a few calls this morning There's some tree branches in the tree and the river is coming out and the trees need to be cleaned out. I can't do anything about it. If the council doesn't actually do the rules, how do you get that? I just say that it's up to them to actually deal with it. If you don't want your property to flood, then you don't grow trees on the side of a river or a drain bank. All drains need to be fenced to keep stock out, so not to damage the banks or the base of the drains, because it is, unfortunately, some farmers use the drains for their stock watering system, and what that does is create erosion of the banks and filling up of the drain with silt and dirt that you have to go along and clean out. What else do I want to tell you? Increased flow or additional drains flowing into an existing drain need to be managed. The capacity has to be calculated for the catchment and the outlet, not just the section or the site that's being considered by building consents or resource consents. It may mean that the drain and the outlet should be increased inside, thus requiring a consent to do so. There's a whole lot of rules now that just keep appearing out of nowhere, like on a floodplain, no more than 50 cubic meters of dirt on a floodplain, which sometimes is actually quite hard when you want to dig a drain. It's 50 cubic meters, not much. Development needs to happen, but the stormwater plan needs to consider retention, piping, and the capacity of the drain to the outlet, so not the flood farmland who are paying the land drainage rate. Remembering that the definition of drains is to keep the water table below the land surrounding it. Land drainage areas are not new, created years ago to improve our district's economy. And FNDC only has the 4, which they struggle to manage, but critical. A drain needs to be cleaned from the top, which means the headlands from where the drain starts, to the outlet, which is either a river or a harbour. You cannot have someone decide not to clean part of it part way through the actual drain itself. Hence why it is a drainage district and with the drainage district rules. The best way for drainage water to get to the river outlets before the floodwaters, the best way for drainage water is to get to the river before the floodwaters from the upper catchments reach that area. So I ask you to please reject the planner's recommendations and include land drainage within the FNDC proposed district plan. Anything else you want to add before?
We've covered it pretty well, really.
I'll just take questions out then, hopefully.
I've got one.
Thank you.
I've got one question, but I'm going to probably have others. You refer to Far North as lucky you only have 4 drainage districts, but then you've said at the back you have others, or the other way around, should I say, 5. So what is it, 5 or 4?
There's 4 active ones. Yeah, the one that's inactive is the Herikino one, but apparently it sits there. And the only reason I know that is when doing the finances with FNDC, Herikino seem to have got some money from somewhere.
So they don't take any money from.
They don't take any money from anywhere.
And if the North Regional Council are doing a good job doing what they're in charge of, is there any way, I'm just talking about other things, is there any way they could not take over these drainage schemes instead of the Far North District Council, if they're doing a good job of that? And
Trust me, it has been asked many times, and trust me, they look the other way.
okay.
But we are still trying to negotiate that with them. I think that is being put up by the council to the NRC, but it's just like 3 waters being part of Whangarei. They don't want us either.
So if you take this money in, obviously that this one property, who allocates the money to do the work?
The the money goes into an account and we have the committee.
Right.
And usually meet before like September, before the summer period, to actually know what work needs to be done. And that work has come about by the spray contractor, which spraying happens every year. In Kaitaia once a year, because it is, so many drains. In Waihara, Kaikino and Motutangi, they often do twice a year. And when it comes to the machine cleaning, and the spraying is usually December through to March, so that it's in the dry time, no water in the drains, where the weeds aren't prolifically growing. And then there's machine cleaning, and normally the spray contractor, in doing the spraying drains, fills in a report that suggests drains that need to be put up for machine cleaning. Well, we only machine clean like slips. It's mostly weed cleaning if the spraying can't cope with it, because no one really likes to have a digger going machine cleaning every year. That's sort of like how it used to happen, and it doesn't really happen that much more if we can keep the maintenance on. And that's what Darren is doing now. He goes and checks the drains to make sure that they have been sprayed, and that the contractor has done the report, and he can see what he needs to go and look at. And then we'll have to reassess that to set the rate. We've got to make sure we have a little bit of money in a contingency for emergencies, like if there is some slumping or slipping in wet conditions. But other than that, we just work on that budget. We're not allowed to go over that money. We either have to program it, otherwise we have to apply to the council for a loan if we needed something urgently. It's not the council will give it to you, it's because it's a targeted rate.
You don't have anybody from the council that comes up once a year and walk around all these drains and have a look at them.
We used to 6 years ago. It used to be run really well 6 years ago. That having someone to do that, or people can check in, because the committee that we have allocated so many areas of drains each. They've got areas or compartments, and local farmers usually know who that is, so they'll ring them to say that they might need something looked at, and then they bring that to the committee meeting in September, and we have another meeting in March for that works program.
So the committees made up basically of the farmers who are impacted by the drains, and they're voluntary committees, and so the farmers feel that it's so important that they're prepared to be on the committee. But some of the things that have happened, and it's in the last 6 years really, with the development, like avocado development, for example. At one stage, the contractor who used to do the digger work could go from the top to the bottom in one easy thing, and so now with the development, there's been plantings and so on, and so he's not able to do that, and that's actually, I know costs not what you're considering, but it does add.
Well, I'm on this interested because probably tied to what we can do, right? There's only certain things we can do in this procedure here, but I'm just asking what happens now. I mean, what went wrong 6 years ago, can I say? What
Lack of maintenance, lack of monitoring.
Take a start.
Lack of whatever.
Oh, right, okay.
No start. The important thing about like we're talking about, we used to be able to go from A to B and spray a drain. All the farmers are happy to have drain fences on the main drains for a spray contractor to go through, and they're all happy to have a culvert if necessary to allow that to happen. And that's where we have to be very careful of as subdivisions happen, and I know that they are happening. Those drains aren't getting recognised, so then they're getting fenced off or not being able to be accessed, and the contractors are getting very upset because if you're on a big farm and you don't have that access down the drain, they've got to go into the paddock, out of the paddock, into the paddock, out of the paddock, and they're only on a per metre rate for doing it.
Oh, okay.
So it's getting to that point where drainage is essential wherever it is, whether it's subdivisions, whether it's farms, etc. You've got to go from the ground up first.
And the change of use is a good thing, you know, productivity, but what needs to happen is that the change of use, what they're doing needs to be monitored, because they do development, change the contour of the land, it impacts other farmers when it rains because of siltation, and siltation goes on to productive dairy land, for example, and that means you can't feed the cows, so you've got to take them off and feed them somewhere else, and it's all cost.
And the siltation is what's filling the streams.
Yeah.
Did you want to say something, Darren?
I will be the person marching around taking photos of the after work and sending them back to council with a report. And liaising with the farmer to make sure that man is happy with the job done. That is what hasn't been done. And that's what needs to be done. So that's what we've come up with. Hopefully I can do the job.
Well, I gave you the big maps just to show you that this is not a small area. This is a large area of land. Compared to urban stormwater management plans for Ahipara or Pukenui, that this is a large area of land in the Finals District Council. And that's why I believe it needs to be in the district plan.
I heard that. Yeah, I know a bit about this. The local knowledge I'll have, and then I'll refer to the gentleman's about what can actually happen through this hearings process. So what I've heard is the drainage districts, you want them to be in the proposals of plan. What are you suggesting? A map overlay or how to do it?
There is map overlays in FNDC, but
How to get in the plan?
how do we get in the plan?
I'll refer to these guys. The other thing I heard was downstream impacts of consenting. So land use change and development. And then, so that's impacting on downstream. Water not getting there in flooding areas or getting there quicker because of more deficits. And then you've jumped into a couple of operational things too. There's maintenance issues, the lack of monitoring, clearing, whether that's staffing, management, leadership, I don't know. It's been a problem for a long time. And then the bylaws that are there not being enforced, once again, that's operational. But the things that might be important from this point of view is somehow working out how we can enforce no buildings within 10 metres of drains. We've got similar things with power lines. No plantings within 5, no animals out, so they've got to be fenced. Does that come under one of our national environmental standards? Fresh water, for instance. Can we attack it from a different direction?
That's through NRC. But
they always go past the ball, don't they?
trust me, I have just been through that with them and had to, unfortunately for the poor people out in the community, all these plans get written. And if you disagree with it, or if they drew lines on your property, you as an owner have to pay professionals to prove that they are wrong. And like ecologists cost $10,000, hydrologists $10,000. You can't get one for anything less than that. And like you say about the fresh water plan, that is NRC, and we went through that with them. And reality is they go, well, no, land drainage is FNDC. We wash our hands of that, go back to FNDC. But FNDC does not have.
Actually, example on that. If you look at that map there of the northern drainage areas, that all dictated out through the Mediterranean Channel into the
Ahipara Harbour.
That becomes regional council for clearing that out there. We had the problem down in the South Island or East Coast somewhere where they didn't clear it and it did a lot of damage. So I think that sort of thing might be. But it's back to this hearing process relating to the proposals plan. How do we address it here? And I'll let these two gentlemen give me a hand. I just want to bring up those particular issues. And that Mediterranean, I've been around the haircuts now. There was a joker farm up there, Alan Summers, and he was eventually because his farm was flooded repeatedly because the drain was blocked. The discharge outlet in the Ahipara. And he was eventually actually unable to farm because he was under he was basically charged with cruelty to animals under the SPCA and the MPI rules at the time because he couldn't feed, which is what Cheryl made under.
Yeah, I think the question that arises is how would you, what do you put in the district plan to meet the concerns that you've got? I mean, as Steve says, you put an overlay of some sort on the planning maps.
Yeah,
You know, what does that do? There's no rules or anything like that.
it's more or less the rules, because that's the only part that we've been, I submitted in 2003, 2009. And the 2019 is just happening now. But those rules there are a good set of rules to apply to the area or into planning, not just as bylaws, but as rules within the district plan.
You know, somebody would have to present that set of rules to us, maybe the officers can, and they might comment on it. As to what we plan. It's not clear to me it's exactly what we put in the plan, and would be standing on regional councils, and, you know, standing on income, their rules that they carry out. And as you say, while this is all going on, you know, Joe and Josephine public around the farm dealing with these matters, probably sit around saying,
Yeah.
I mean, it's an administration problem on behalf of the district council. They need a cap to get on with administering the.
More than one.
I think that's basically where it lies. So you can put what you like in the district plan.
Yeah,
But, you know, if there's no teeth to what's in the district plan, but I'm suggesting.
it's like this is on the website now as a drainage district for Whānau District Council, along with the stormwater lines. And this is the northern one that's got the differentials on it too. So this is in the plan as in maps. But when it comes to referring to the land drainage areas when doing anything, that's what's missing.
Yeah, I think people would argue, I'm not saying it's my point of view, it's not my dad's point of view, but people could argue that there's sufficient rules and regulations in place with the drainage schemes to look after what you're looking at. Basically, what you want to make is part of the subdivision proposal. This is land drainage districts taken into account.
Yes.
When you look at subdivision criteria, there's a number of criteria. Just maybe drainage districts needs to be a specific matter there.
Yes,
That might be
that's what we're working at.
actually providing for you. Otherwise, we get more plans, more rules in the plan.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, this is what it is at the moment. I
No,
mean, that's without dealing with the things that people put to us at the moment. I mean, I don't know what you do with that kind of mistake.
the average person out there is not okay with it and does not do anything about it. And they just go, well, we'll just see how we go and we'll ask for forgiveness if nothing else.
That's what
That's
I'm
about it.
trying to explain to my wife what to do.
I have got a copy of the land drainage bylaws here, the
I think, yeah,
2019.
we.
You want a copy of
we
them?
want to take one. But the stuff that's in the bylaw, if it was applied properly, like it used to be, did it work?
But yeah, but it was the old days of respect and
Yeah, I understand that, yeah, it did work so. Do you think there's any provisions in there that, like Mr. Watson said, we could transfer if we
Yes.
would like to into the district plan provision?
yes,
There are, okay. Okay, well,
which is what I had.
yeah, okay, yeah. So the idea of this process is you put suggestions forward.
Yes,
Obviously, the officer at this stage is recommending we don't do anything.
yes,
He sat and listened to what you said, the same as us. When he does his writing reply, he might change his mind. I'm not saying he will, but he might, you never know. He might suggest that we could do this. We might do that, and we might say, yes, that's a good idea. We might say, no, it's not a good idea. So that's the process at the moment.
Can I ask why you decided
can
not to?
he reply to
No,
his own projection why? Because then maybe we can understand a bit more. But the frustration out here is,
well, yeah, he's explained, and then he explained why in his decision.
You can answer them nicely.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just, there must be a reason or some what we are missing, why
Well,
we,
he can expand on the comments in his report, but as I've said, he may, you don't know, as a result of hearing what's been said, he may change his mind. I'm not saying, well, he's not going to do that now. Because he's got to take on board what's been said, and he's probably going to read it, but do you want to
I guess my reasons were that it seems to be primarily an implementation of the bylaw concern. But now I've obviously heard a bit more around where those sources of concern, and it's really at the time of development or land use change that you want these things to be considered.
and building consents, like building, just at Quarry Road now, where they're doing the bridge, and it's, you know, it's there's a house built right there, and it's got a shed built right beside the stop bank. That should be 10 metres away. But it's been allowed for a house to be built and a shed.
I was going to say, because like the infrastructure chapter is primarily about provisions related to infrastructure, which includes drainage schemes, but the source of concerns seems to be the effect of development on drainage schemes. So we just need to think about how those considerations could be brought into the PDP. It might be, you know, most efficiently addressed at the time of subdivision as consideration, rather than introducing rules throughout the, you know, that apply to all drainage schemes throughout the district. That could be have quite big implications for landowners. I would think that needs to be carefully considered.
Yeah, because Dan Boma, one of your planners, he's working on the drainage bylaws right now. And he was the one that made me aware there's this infrastructure forum and another one that we should be submitting to as well later on in the year.
He's maybe passing the book. You can see.
Yeah, I'll just think, Leah, thanks for what you put forward, and I think Alex did over there has got the message. Looking at other stuff we're looking at through this process of hearings, we're also looking at drainage of the urban environment, overland flow. I do wonder whether it's already, this sort of stuff's already catered for in our engineering standards, demonstrating downstream impacts on catchment. What other committees on that sort of stuff. But yeah, we've definitely heard it, and on 1 or 3 we'll have a chat about it.
Yeah, because I see it many times where I get sometimes consent sent to me for comment. And a lot of them are just looking at the site, not the catchment, and that is a big issue.
And that's what you mentioned is catchment. Well,
Yeah.
land use change within the catchment is impacting on us.
Now, Mr. King, you've got some writing on there, is that, are you still quite happy for us to keep that?
I think so.
You,
It's just been,
you've got some comments, that's all through, whatever. You
oh,
have a look in case, and we can maybe.
just been, it might be my,
We'll get a clean one off the staff.
it might be my comments with Dan.
And Mr. Ways can get a clean copy as well.
I didn't get onto stormwater.
All right, is there anything? See you again. Is there anything else? Or?
No.
All right,
No,
thank you very much. Thank you for presenting the evidence we read it. As I said, the reporting officer has reported now, and we've heard what he said and why he said it. He did the same as us, he's taken on board what we've now said.
Yeah.
We'll review the evidence, and once we get his writing reply, he may change things slightly, he might not bother. He might say, no, it should be dealt with elsewhere in the district plan, so. That's the situation at the moment. All right,
Okay, thank you.
right, safely, thank you very much.
So you can get a copy of this?
Yeah, we can get on this.
I
You
was gonna say,
okay.
my comments are only the ones that I was gonna add in the.
So that's all that is, the 10 metre, you've got there.
Yeah, and culverts between, what do you
The
say?
lady here that drives the process has already emailed us the link.
Yeah, you're not allowed to remove culverts. Some people have been removing culverts. Some people have added in culverts without getting approval too, so they put in small culverts, not big culverts, to take the catchments flow. It's things like that restrict it.
Just get down, drive on, but they were told on that.
I will.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can review, we're just going to go to the meeting, if you don't mind me a second. Thank you.
Pwrhiri, pwrhaharana, o te whakaro, o te tangata. O te aroha, te pau e here nei e a tātou. Mori ora kia tātou, haupie, hui, tātou. And I will stop.
Thank you very much.